Now it's Phil B. Hardy from Screenwriters Talking Shop. On Friday, I had a lovely conversation with a fellow screenwriter who was talking about the business surrounding aspiring screenwriters. That would be consultants, that would be mentors, that would be advisors on how to write a script properly, that would be people selling books on how to write a script properly, that would be these companies that are selling you pitch services or selling you opportunities to have meetings with executives that know all about how to sell screenplays. So in our conversation, he said, these people that are, these industry people, they're like the merchants that were selling shovels and food to the gold miners during the Yukon gold strike, which I've had that very same analogy myself. So, but the difference is they were selling needed supplies to the gold miners, the merchants, and these consultants and these mentors and these other people selling you services in screenwriting beyond maybe how-to books. And obviously, if you want to learn some basic fundamentals of screenwriting, you might want to grab The Hollywood Standard by Chris Riley, which is a great how-to and formatting book, or you might want to get the Screenwriter's Bible. I have no problem with that. I have no problem learning the basics of how to write a screenplay, get the Sid Field's book on the 3-act structure, whatever you need. But beyond that, writing should be an organic process. And unfortunately, the screenwriting industry has set up like a hierarchy and a lowerarchy, whatever you want to call it. There's a whole industry out there of folks that tell you and are selling you rules and formulas of how to write a screenplay. This is how to do it. You need to do this. Save the Cat is probably one of the most prominent examples of that. And what's his name? I can't think of the guy who created Save the Cat. But in any case, he wrote one screenplay called Stop or My Mom Will Shoot You. Hardly a piece of great art, but he had great success with his Save the Cat formula, which told you things like you should have your inciting incident by this page, you should have this character established by this page, you need a turnaround in the second or third act, you need a reversal, you need his last moment, all these things that you need to have in your script. And the other day, it's like I'm reading this whole spiel about how the character needs to have a flaw. You need to show what that character's, your main protagonist's flaw is by the first act. You have to have that. And what's he going to do to redeem this terrible flaw he has, right? All this shit. And I mean, look, I've written characters that have flaws and character traits, but I sure as hell didn't deliberate on how to do that. My process is really more about, for example, well, pretty much with all of them, I have an idea. And what I'll do is I'll generally say, I'm going to define what this movie is in one sentence. That's why I often begin with a log line, a high concept log line where I can define what I'm trying to do in one sentence. And then once I've done that, I start, I'll call this, it's almost like a brainstorming process. I get on my typewriter and I start hitting bullet points. Okay, first I talk about the characters. I come up with the characters I need to populate. If I need villains, what is my main character? Is female, male lead, person of color, any of those things. But I'm not trying to tick a box. I'm just throwing out ideas. This is where I want to go. This is what I want the lead character to be. What's the mission? What is this person trying to establish? And it doesn't have to always be the same kind of formula to do that. And they don't have to do certain things at certain points. It really should be an organic process. Let's talk about character flaws. This is a must, supposedly, if you're writing an action. Let's say you're writing a detective story. Your detective needs to be a drinker. Perhaps he's an alcoholic, or perhaps he's got other issues. He can't sustain relationships. All that stuff's great, okay, if you do it organically. But if it's calculated, to me, it's going to feel calculated. But let's look at the movie Taken. Very famous movie. You could say, in some respects, iconic. There's iconic scenes in that movie. And what character flaws does Brian Mills, the CIA agent, have? He's trying to kind of rebuild a relationship with his young adult daughter, who's like just at the age where she gets out of high school, ready to go to college. She travels to Paris, and he supports her in that. But beyond that, you don't really see many flaws that Brian has. He's a nice guy. And then what happens is his daughter Kim, while she's in Paris, she's in a youth hostel apartment, wherever the hell she's staying with her friend, and she sees her friends being kidnapped in the little room or apartment across the way. She gets on the phone with Daddy. She goes, "Daddy, my friend BB's being kidnapped. What should I do?" And he tells her, "Well, this is what you need to do," right? He's got his British accent and tells her to get under the bed, and hopefully these assholes won't see you, but they probably will. You're probably going to get taken. So all this unfolds. He hears all this going down, and then one of the bad guys, I can't remember what they are, they're Eastern Bloc guys, picks up the phone and talks to Liam Neeson, and he tells the guy, "Look, mate, I've got a particular set of skills, and you'd be better off letting my daughter go, or I'm going to have to come and kick the shit out of you." Essentially, that's what happens. That's what he says. He says, "I can be there. You'll be surprised at how fast it happens," right? And so the Eastern Bloc guy goes, "Good luck." Okay, so that's your setup. Man, right then you've set up this mission. The big mission is this guy's got to go from wherever the hell he's at in the United States, the East Coast, whatever, I can't remember. And he flies out, and right away he gets on the case. He talks to his buddy who's a French cop, tries to get a little information, but then he goes on what little clues he has. He immediately is able to chase down a guy that's kind of... he's recruiting gals for the sex trade slave. You know, he's suckering them, luring them. That's the word I'm looking for. And he tracks that guy down. But all these steps are happening, you know, and he's on a mission, right? But what flaws are we seeing of the character? What does Brian display other than he's a CIA guy, he's an expert at what he does? He's pretty much flying by the seat of his pants, but he knows what he's doing, and he can kick the shit out of anybody that gets in his way, okay? So there's not a lot of the guy's up against it, because everywhere he goes, even though he's being chased at times, he's pretty easily getting out of those situations by beating the living crap out of people. There is what you would call an all is lost moment in the third act, the beginning of the third act, I'd say, of Taken. He's at this huge party where in the bowels, the recesses of this guy's apartment or his facility, a bad guy, he's having this high dollar auction where his daughter just happens to be getting sold into sexual slavery. So that all is lost moment is Neeson getting caught. They chain him up over this kind of flimsy pipe, and he's a prisoner for, God, at least 4 minutes before he gets loose, and he kills all the bad guys, right? Including the guy who's running the auction. From there, he finds out the daughter has been sold to this Middle Eastern sheik, and she's sailing down the river on a big flatboat. He jumps on the flatboat, kicks some more asses, and gets shot while he's doing it. Gets messed up a little bit, but he gets his daughter, and hey, he saves the day, takes her home to mama, right? So that's Taken. Not a super complicated story, but beautifully executed. Some iconic dialogue. You have good bad guys that you don't like. You don't mind seeing them, the people kicking the hell out of them. But is that a really super complicated film? Does he show character flaws? The all is lost moment even is pretty kind of flimsy, if you ask me, right? It's almost like they go, well, you got to put something in here because Brian's just like kicking too much ass too easily. So let's have him captured for 3 minutes, okay? I'll give you that. But I'm saying if you sit there and worry about all this crap, you may inhibit your creativity instead of sitting down and just trying to write a cool story. You know, recently I watched The Killer, David Fincher movie, and a good part of that movie is the first half hour, the first act. It's really kind of a 5-act story, and in each act, the killer has an objective. But the killer really never displays any flaws. He tells you, I'm human like anybody else. But again, he somewhat has superhuman skills if you really look at it. he gets beat up a little bit in the movie. He fucks up in the beginning, and he misses his target because one of the ladies of the evening steps in front of the guy that he's supposed to kill in an apartment across the way. A bit of bad luck, but I wouldn't call that a character flaw. I call that happenstance. It just happened. So, but as a result of that, then his boss sets up a plan to eliminate his number one killer, and then he goes after his family. So the killer has a mission. He's got to go back to his life and salvage the wreckage of his life. That's his mission. But again, the killer, whose name we don't even know, he really never displays any great flaws in that screenplay. In fact, he's constantly on the move, showing you how to do his job, how to not get caught. He's got 14, 15 rules that he lives by, if I remember correctly. And some of these rules get repeated during the course of the screenplay. And step by step, he accomplishes his objectives with very little opposition. Again, other than one fight in, I'll call it the third act, he fights some guy called the Brute. And it's an epic fight. It's about 8 minutes of screen time, maybe longer. And these guys are beating the crap out of each other. But again, it's really not that much of a struggle to me, But it feels right? It's just this guy is very skilled at what he does. He's got a mission. And he just happens to be better than the people that are trying to kill him. But as far as all this other bullshit, David Fincher just delivered an exciting movie. It's got a fight. It's got parts that are very talky. There's a lot of talking going on in this movie. Even the last scene, the last two acts are sort of lower key. He kills another hitman that has a long conversation with a female hitman, and then he goes after the final guy and decides to he gives him a warning, right? So. Somewhat unusual movie, but very entertaining. Doesn't use a lot of the usual tropes, in my opinion. And I don't think David Fincher's sitting there going, oh, God, I got to do this at this particular time. He's just, the guy who wrote the script did a good job. It's good writing. It doesn't feel formulaic. It's a great first-person narrative. It does have some of that neo-noir quality, but I don't feel like it's a formulaic, I had to do this. And that's why I'm telling you, all that shit is bunk from where I sit. Now, again, I'm going to have pushback on this. There's going to be people telling me, oh, no, if you do this and this, and you're wrong, Phil, what do you know? And I'm saying, I don't really care if some industry person who's never made a film, and in a lot of cases has never written anything, let alone anything of merit, and they're going to tell me how to do my job, or I'm going to go to a consultant, and I'm going to rewrite an unsold spec screenplay 3 different ways from Sunday, when I can probably have 3 or 4 of my writing buddies give me some suggestions, and maybe 2 of them say the same thing. That's something that needs to be changed. Or maybe it doesn't need to be changed. Maybe I'm on the right track and my buddies are not on the right track. Because a lot of this is, do you believe in what you're writing? Now, I've made changes and I've done things based on suggestions, and also on the feature film that is coming out hopefully later this fall. I did some rewriting on that script. The producer asked me, can you do this? Can you do this? They were minor things. But there were some disagreements on my part on things I defended. But the reality is, if you sell a script, and if it gets made into a movie, there's going to be changes made. But why don't you wait until that script gets optioned and you get some money, or a film is going to get made, before you worry about doing rewrites on a spec screenplay. That's just my opinion. I think the idea is spew that spec screenplay out on paper, read it through a couple times, get a couple people to read it if that's your thing, go through and fine-tune it. My process is I will write 10 pages, 10 pages, and each day I go through those pages. I rewrite those pages as I go along. Before I even start, 10 new pages. Every 10 pages, I'm rewriting already, and I'm saying, how can I say this with less words? How can I have less dialogue here? What am I missing? And then by the end of the screenplay, I do read-throughs, and then on the first read-through, I use the final draft machine, and then I'm going, what's missing here? I connect up things that seem like they don't connect up. I find those things to glue the story together if they're missing. That's how I do it. And then I do a couple of read-throughs. And from there, if I think it's got legs, that bada bing. I mean, I've entered screenplays that I've written, and then maybe a couple weeks later I threw them into a contest. Which is also actually a pretty good way to get. There's some contests out there you can get free feedback without even paying somebody on your work. But I'm telling you, screenwriting, good scripts should be an organic process, and you should worry about great writing and not worry about formulas or rules. Obviously, there's guidelines when you're writing a script. Yes, it'd be a nice thing if you have an inciting incident. It'd be good if your character's got a purpose or something to do, but it's not always like a hero's journey. Recently, I wrote a dramedy called Que Sera. It's kind of something I came up with based on a lot of my experience in A, because I was going to be a psychologist at one time, so I incorporated that, and B, all my years as an LA musician. So Kay is, by day, she's a psychologist that is giving therapy to people, mostly couples therapy, and by night, she's a musician that leads a band called Betty Gone Bad, and she's playing the club scene in 1991, playing places like the Troubadour and the Whiskey and those type of places. So her mission in life is she wants to get a record deal. You know, they're still making records back in 1991, or CDs or whatever. They still had record deals before all this digital crap came in. So her mission is she wants to be a rock star. Even though she makes a good living as a psychologist, she wants to be a rock star, okay? Kind of mirrors some of my life. You know, I had a good professional white-collar job when I was 25, but I still wanted to be a rock star. So I wrote what I knew about. I had a messed up family. I wrote what I knew about. Guess what? Kay's got a messed up family. She's got a drug addict mother. You know, my dad was a bipolar guy, but he was an alcoholic, so dealt with that. I'm speaking from experience. So Kay's mom's a raving drug addict. Her grandmother's a grizzled old cigarette smoking, common sense person, and she's the one who's taking care of Kay's younger sister. I can't think. Cosmo. Cosmo's 16 years old. She's a smart-ass high school student, got a big mouth. Grandma's whatever she is, 77. And so one day Grandma calls up Kay, who's got a pretty stable, cushy life. She's got her own house in Santa Monica with, 300 payments left to make on it. She's got her job. She's got her band. But Grandma says, Kay, Cosmo's driving me crazy. I need a break from her. You got to take her for 2 weeks. That's my B story. But again, it comes about organically. I didn't sit there and go, oh yeah, well, it's something I thought of. That Que Sera is first and foremost about her being a driven person to accomplish her goal, but her obstacle is that she gets saddled with her little sister for a couple weeks at a crucial time when she's about to do a showcase for Columbia Records. So she does take Cosmo, and so Kay, obviously there's things that happen. She has an appreciation for Cosmo. There's other things that happen with the family where they're finally able to get mom into rehab. But there's a lot of turmoil. The B plot has a lot of things going on. And then in the A plot, Kay's guitar player ODs, and her and one of the other members of the band, the bass player, there's 3 females and a male in the band. They take the guitar player to the hospital after she's OD'd. And when they're in the lobby, Kay sort of callously suggests to the drummer and the bass player that, hey, maybe we should get rid of Kathy because, I don't know, she's OD'd on drugs. How can she be reliable? We may be going out on tour. Excuse me. Sorry for coughing. What happens when you talk a lot? But the 2 other band members reel back, and they're going, wow, that's kind of callous. I mean, Kathy's been a loyal member. Sure, she's OD'd on coke, but she's going to be okay. And as far as I know, she's not making a habit of it. So they wind up having a meeting with all the members of the band, and Kathy gives her assurances she's not going to have another slip like that again. But really, the main character flaw that Kay shows in that is she's very myopic, and she is somewhat callous in that. She catches herself, and she does admit that, yeah, you're right, maybe I was jumping the gun on that. But that came about organically. That was something that came about in the writing. I didn't sit there and go, oh yeah, she's got to be kind of an asshole in this scene. It just was one of the things that came up during the writing process. So this is what I'm using as an illustration of organically storytelling. Yes, write enough bullet points so that you know where you're going. Try to have a beginning, middle, and end. That would be nice. I always do that. Sometimes I don't have an end. Sometimes I'll start with 15, 20 bullet points. I may get to page 50 or 60 because I think of other scenes as I'm going along. But I go, geez, I have an idea how I want to end this, but I'm not sure how I'm going to do it. Right? But I always sort that out. And then sometimes I go back, I write those other 15, 20 bullet points to finish off my screenplay. But another thing that happens, like I was saying earlier, is ideas spring up during the writing process. Scene ideas spring forward during the writing process. And then there's scenes at the end of the process. There's scenes that seem like a good idea at the time, and I will cut scenes. If a scene does not add value to the screenplay, after I've read it through a couple times, I'm going, what can I get rid of? My screenplay is 125 pages. I want it to be 115 pages, and I will see. And that's where all the scenes, you try to figure out what's the most vulnerable scenes, the least value-added scenes, and that's what I do. So that's the process, and that's my opinion about using formulas, as so stated in this video. From Screenwriters Talking Shop, this is Philip E. Hardy. You have a blessed day.